we don't have the right stuff to properly control the technological advances that we can create. Too much reptilian brainstem, in us, and so that was one thing that was important on stuff.
Well, so I'm under the impression what you're saying is that you felt it wasn't a good idea to keep progressing to explore the paranormal until humankind was more spiritually advanced.
Well, the aerospace thing kind of took over because there was the second thing that I felt was quite likely, besides consciousness controlling craft, and you're having a tough time back in engineering, besides not having the right materials. Well, I felt that where is it that we don't have any industry in orbit? So before the aerospace company was really going much at all, and I was kind of maybe in the late 90s investigating, getting into it, but not knowing. I thought, well, what if amalgams and other kinds of composites were birthed in a microgravity environment, and we don't have any of that, so we're not able to get 80 layers in a tenth of a millimeter strata, and which we couldn't duplicate, or the fineness or the purity of some materials, right, that we couldn't duplicate.
And if I understand correctly, what you're referring to are objects that you had collected while you were working with NIDS that appeared, according to reports, that these things may have fallen off UFOs, and they were examined in laboratories, and they were composites of this sort.
Basically, there was a researcher that had extractions of, he would extract anomalous objects from people. And we would get those tested.
I mean, I know Jacques Vallée had a collection of such objects, and Hal Puthoff has published some analyses of these objects.
My feeling still is that until we get a robust, really decently sized and capable laboratory in space, not just the little things that you fool around with on the ISS, but something substantial, something where you can really have things occur serendipitously, which is about half of all things occur because of that, the things that just happen to happen. We're never really going to know how certain kinds of materials are acquired, given the menu, the periodic table that we're dealing with, right? So, and maybe where ours is not complete as it is.
Well, now, this is interesting because it gives me a new insight. It seems as if one of the motivations then for building these inflatable habitats that could be placed in orbit or even further out in the Lagrange points is to set up laboratories, rather large-scale laboratories, for doing things that can only be done in a zero-gravity environment, but to some degree was inspired by the idea that certain composite metals were manufactured this way and were associated with UFOs.
So, yeah, but it's still speculation, and the fact is you got to make money first. Right? So you have to go down through the parochial ways, tourism and other kinds of things, maybe movie industry, whatever. And, new kinds of sake that's flown in space, because the Japanese did a lot of that, where the yeast is grown there in orbit, and they put it in the sake, and then they can sell it by the ton. You have to have some kind of business concepts, right? So we had a lot of those different business concepts too. And then at some point, you can say, okay, let's go do a lab that nobody has. Let's do a big friggin' lab, right? A big friggin' lab. And maybe you don't want some of those labs occupied, because you want to be able to destroy the lab if you have to.